Hi everyone, in this video we'll look into for each scope in MuleSoft. So the main objective of for each scope is to split the collection into elements and process them iteratively through the processes embedded within the flow. Let me demonstrate with a use case. So here if you see, I have a flow with a listener, okay? So I'm going to drag and drop a for each. So how do you drag and drop means it will be available under core components in Mule palette panel. Scroll down, you will find for each scope. Just drag and drop here. Okay. So I'm going to keep a payload. I'm going to do some operation. Okay. For example, as I mentioned before, this for each is going to split the collection. So it will only accept the collection and it will split the collection element by element and iterate them. So I'm just taking a set payload here and I'm just going to multiply doing some operation. Okay, for whatever element that is coming inside for each loop, I'm going to do some operation. That is, I'm multiplying it by 10. Finally, I'm going to print the same payload at the end of for each in the form of JSON. Okay, I'm saving the flow here. I am going to run it. It will take few seconds. So the build is success. Now our application will get deployed. All right, so the application got deployed. I'm going to use Postman to trigger a transaction. Okay, so if you see here, I have taken a collection. Okay, and I'm going to send it. Okay, so as per the implementation, I'm doing some operation, multiplication operation, right? So whenever an element comes in, it will get multiplied by 10, and then it should ideally be how sending out the payload, right? But if you see here, the response we got is whatever we sent is the same we got as output. Okay. So the reason being, for each will not change your payload. Okay. So if you are passing a payload inside for each scope, whatever operation it performs after the end of for each scope, the actual payload will never get changed. Okay. I'll tell you how do you capture the payload inside for each, and it can be used also even after the end of for each scope, right? For that, we have to use a variable. Okay. So before that, I'll tell you some of the configurations for each. Okay. So whatever you see here, right? Under settings, you have collection, counter variable name, batch size, root message, variable name. So collection is nothing but by default it will accept payload. Okay. In case if you have something like a array, array of objects, right? So what do? That time you can use like this. I mean, payload dot. If you have ID in the payload that has an that needs to be iterated with the use of ID, you can use it, and you need to enable the FX here. Okay, I'll show you how to do that as well. I'm saving here. Okay, and I'm just going to run it in debug mode. I'm stopping in the existing one, running it in debug mode, and going to the debugger view, and I'm going to Postman. Meantime, the application comes online. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give some key value pair. Okay, name, it can be anything. You can put a BC, and it can have an ID. It can be an integer. So I'm going to copy this and create one more object inside array, and I'm going to give it as EFG. Now ID will be 2, right? Let's see if the application is up and running. Okay, it's still running. I'll wait for a moment. Right. So our application is up. I'm going to trigger a transaction from Postman. Before that, let me put a debug point. Okay. I'm putting a debugger inside for each. I'm going to trigger a transaction. I'm going to studio. So if you see here, these are the variables, right? So counter is nothing but, so if you have 10 elements in your array, right? So counter is a variable like that will be increased based on the iteration. For example, you have 10 variables, it will become 1. It will become 1 for the first iteration and become 2 for the third iteration. Similarly, root message. So root message, if you see, it contains all the details. What is the incoming header details, starting from header details till the payload. Okay. Now we are going to consider the payload. If you see here, we are inside payload, I mean, for each already. So our first element is 1, right? I'm going next. Yep. So if we see here, our ID for 1 got processed. Now it goes to second one. Okay. If you see here, the payload is 2. I'm going next. It comes out. And if you see the payload, it says it's actual payload that we are passing from Postman. So it did not get changed, right? So I'm just terminating the flow. Now, how to capture the payload that is getting processed inside for each, right? Let me go to developer view. I'm going to use a variable. Okay, so only payload, the operation performing on top of payload inside for each cannot be captured outside. So other way is we can use take help. I mean, we can use a variable. Okay, so I'm going to create a set of variable at the beginning. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do incoming records. Okay, and I'm going to keep it as an empty array, right? And one more variable inside for each, right? I'm going to give the same name that I have used out the variable outside for each, and I'm going to use the same variable name. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the variable. Okay, this is an array, right? So we should not use plus plus. Plus plus we will only use if you want to concatenate the objects. Now we are going to add an element into array. So we have to use only plus, and then we have to put a payload, right? So MIME type we need to define, otherwise we'll get an error. So output application slash JSON dash 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 dot. Let me put it this way. So Okay, let me pick it camel case. Okay, okay, now it's done, right? Now, I'm going to the transfer message outside, okay? I'm going to print both the original payload, okay? So if you see here, I'm going to put the original payload, that is the payload that is we're going to pass from postman and then followed by processed records, okay? I mean, processed records, okay? Um, Let me make it camel case. So it's always recommended to use camel case for your variables, everything, right? So I'm going to format it, right? I'm going to save it. My application is already running. I'm just redeploying it. It will redeploy on its own. Okay. All right. So my application is redeployed. Okay. I'm going to trigger a transaction from. I'm going to keep a breakpoint at my set variable. Okay. I'm going to hit a request from my postman. I'm going to send on request. Okay, my request came to the flow. If you see here, the payload is name ID. Now, if you closely look at this incoming records is what we set, right? So it becomes an with size 0 array, right? Now I'm going inside for each. Okay, now we are into set payload. Okay, now if you closely look, we have a counter variable, incoming records is 0, root message. Okay, and the payload becomes 1, right? Since we are using a payload.id, go next, right? So 1 and after the operation becomes 10. Okay, then payload becomes 2. Then I'm going out, so it becomes 20. Okay, my for each will get completed. Now in the transfer message, so if you see the payload becomes the whatever we passed from postman. If you see the incoming records, it becomes 1020, right? So this is a way we can actually capture the payloads. I mean the response that is being processed within for each. Okay, I am resuming the flow. Go to postman to take a look at the output. So if you see in the answer message, right? In the original payload, we actually capturing the payload. If we go back to Postman, the original payload, we have the input that we passed as payload in the in the flow, and in the process record, we would see 10 and 20. This is the process record. So that's how you capture the records that is getting processed inside for each. All right, fine. Yep. So before that, I will tell you what this batch size is all about. Suppose if you have 10 elements in an array, right? And if you give this batch size as 2, what it happens in each batch, right? So 2 elements will be picked out of the 10 records, so that overall 5 batches will get processed. So this batch size the configuration of batch size will help in faster processing of your records, right? Fine. Let me change it to batch size 1 itself. Right. Now, how do you handle error inside for each, right? So the major disadvantage of this for each is if any record, if I have, let's say if I have um, I'm just passing 6 elements, right? Inside a collection. Let me have, let's say one record got failed, right? What happens? Okay. I'm just going to simulate one, okay? I'm just passing an object, okay? And I'm going to do what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this and I'm going to comment this as well, just to show you how this error, I'm just simulating the error. Okay, basically that's what I'm going to do, right? So I'm doing an operation, a multiplication of 10. Okay, let's see. I'm going to save it, let it get redeployed. All right, so my application got redeployed, so I'm going to trigger an operation, a try request from postman, going back to my flow, going to debugger. You see, this is my payload, right? And this is my root message. It's still outside for each. I'm going in. Oops, what happened? Okay, let me trigger one more time. Okay, let's me check if, okay. So I'm going to put a breakpoint one more time. I'm going to send a transaction from postman. Okay, it came inside for each. All right, so I know why it is erroring out, because here, if you see, I am passing as payload.id. So I should be, you can keep it as payload. It's anyway by default payload though, right? Make the changes, saving it, let it redeploy. Okay, so it is redeployed, going back to postman, triggering a try request, flow. Okay, it's inside my flow, it's inside my for each. If you see, this is my first payload, right? So the counter variable, if you notice, it's a 1, right? I'm going next. Okay, right, my first I got processed, and counter variable 2, and my payload becomes 2, going next. Okay, no issues. My second record got processed. Now into third record, going next. Okay, no issues. Fourth record now, right? So my first four records got processed. Now I'm in counter variable. No, I mean my iteration, fifth iteration. Okay, that's where I'm passing a string, right? Going next, right? If you see, it will throw an error. Why? Because you see, I cannot do multiplication of 10 with an string, right? So that's why it error out, right? And I'm going out, so for out of for each, if you go back and see the message, right? It shows that it failed, right? Because of this string, right? So how to handle this error inside for each? So that's what we are going to look at now, right? So there is a way that we can do it, right? Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to toggle the command and comment it, right? Going back to developer mode. What I'm going to do, I'm going to use a try block, okay? So with the help of try block, we can avoid such kinds of, such kind of issues, right? So the problem is, till 4 records, my that I did not face any issue. Just because my fifth record failed, my flow got terminated, so I could not process the sixth record, right? So the scenario we are going to see is how to process the records, okay? Even though if any error happened in within the in between any records, right? If I have 10 records, even though my fifth record failed, it should not get terminated. It should be this processing should get completed till 10 records, right? How can we do that? Right? So I'm going to drag and drop a try block, okay? And I'm going to move this inside my try block. Okay. See, basically I can, what happens if you wrap this for each in try block, right? This is not how you should do, right? You should always do a for each, and you should keep the try block inside that for each, right? Okay. So this is a major point you need to always be aware of. Okay. And then under error handling, I'm going to use an error continue just because I wanted to continue with my processing, right? Right. So I'm going to keep a logger for now, just a simple logger saying um, error record proceeding with the flow. Okay. Right. So I'm just saving it. Let me see if it is running. Okay, it's my application still running. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to capture the fail records here, right? Okay, before that I have to keep a for each, right? Where is my for each? I have a for each. I'm just dragging and dropping inside the for each. Okay, right. So now what will happen? Right. So I'm going to drag and I wanted to capture my the records that are getting failed. Okay. So I'm dragging and drop a variable here. Okay. I'm naming it as fail records, and this again will become an array since I'm passing in an array. And let me put it as a success record. Okay. Right. I'm just renaming the variables. And I'm going to add one more variable here. Okay, I'm putting as fail records with the same name, right? Similarly, how I'm doing, I'm capturing the successful records. I'm also capturing the fail records at their exception handler. Okay, enabling effects, right? So to rename this as fail records, right? I'm just copying, right? I'm just okay. Here, failed records. Okay, I'm going to put success records. Okay. Okay. What we have done is we have just added a variable. Okay. Okay. Let me rename the variable. Okay. Set failed records. Even here, failed records. Successful records. Successful records. Okay. Fine. Now let's see. Okay. What is happening? Right. Let's see. My application is still running. Okay. Let it get deployed. Okay, I think it's up. I'm going to trigger a transaction, go back, back to flow. My request is inside the flow, going to Mule debugger. If you see my payload becomes 1 and my counter variable becomes 1, failed record has become size of 0, success record of size of 0. Go proceeding with the transaction. First record becomes success, second record is coming in, second record success, incoming third record becomes success, fourth record becomes success, right? So if you see the iteration becomes 5 because our first 4 records were success. So that's why you are seeing the success records becomes getting populated, but failed record becomes 0, right? Moving ahead, it's inside the set payload. The payload is A. Okay, it failed because I'm trying to multiply a with an by 10, right? Okay, it come to honor continue, going to logger, and I'm just going to the console just to see you the logger, how it is getting printed. I'm declaring the console. Next, right? So if you see error record proceeding with the flow, this is the info message that you will get displayed, right? Please notice that till now our failed record is of size 0. No element was captured here, right? I'm moving that, right? I'm just expanding the variables. You see the failed records is A, right? Fine. Now I have one more element, right? If you see the counter variable as 6, right? And the payload becomes 6. Going next, it's into set payload, success, and it came out, right? If you see here, my failed record is A, and the success records are 10, 20, 30, 40, and 60, right? I'm just going next. My flow got completed, going to Postman to see the output, right? As you see here, we are capturing three different things, right? One is original payload, successful payload, records, failed records, right? Going to Postman. So original payload is same as what we sent it from, from Postman. And going to the successful records, except this string, all other my records are getting successfully processed. And only failed record is A just because we are trying to multiply it with 10, right? So we are seeing 200 OK response. So we have handled the error properly using try block, right? So just keep it. Point to note is you have to always keep try block inside for each, not for each inside try block. Because why I'm stressing upon this fact is, if you go back, I'm just stopping the uh, application, okay? Because people tend to do like this, okay? I'm just showing it once here. Put it here. If you right click, you can see wrap in try block, okay? If you do this, what happens? As you could see, right? Your for each goes inside try, okay? It will not work that way, okay? So your tries always should be within for each. And that's how the error handling within for each will work. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, please share and subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much.